Ohio people with Mennonite views, and they're gonna give us some missional news. Ohio Conference Cast.
You are listening to Ohio Conference Cast, a podcast dedicated to sharing missional stories and other information about Ohio Mennonite Conference.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ohio Conference Cast. With me today, I have a co-host.
Hi, this is Paula Snyder-Belusic.
And our guest that we're interviewing, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Glen Guyton, the Executive Director for Mennonite Church USA.
And welcome, Glenn. You know, no stranger to the podcast. You've been on once or twice?
Once, so this is my second time.
Good.
All right.
Good.
Great.
Well, we're grateful for you doing this, and we are in Bluffton, Ohio. We're having what is happening this afternoon? I'm not exactly sure. I know we got invited to it as Ohio Conference pastor.
Oh, well, sometimes I don't know. I just show up to places. It's on my schedule, and I show up. But I think it's really just a conversation with some of the pastors from Ohio Conference and also Central District, people that are kind of toward this area. And then I'll actually be doing some things at Bluffton University next week, meeting with the students and meeting with the faculty and staff.
Yeah. Okay. Glenn, as he introduced himself as the executive director, and Paula, you didn't introduce your role in Ohio Conference.
Well, I'm the assistant moderator.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
you were the former assistant moderator. So
Yeah,
it's a very
former.
illustrious co-host we have today.
But I feel like I'm on the outside looking in here. Right? You guys have, both come off of a CLC meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So you're in the know. So tell me and the rest of the audience here, and no numbers, but we think our audience is strongly in the double digits still.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But what's going on? I read a little bit about CLC, and you sat a new committee to work on guidelines, and we can get into that. But first, tell me a little bit about CLC.
I don't know, Paula, do you want to start with CLC? I feel like I'm just kind of staff at that position.
Sure. Well, let's see, it was a month or 6 weeks ago that we met in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yep.
And so some of the things, sort of the major part of that agenda was hearing reports from all the conferences. And normally we get this huge electronic document where you have to read all of these reports. And so we gave people an opportunity to share, and they were supposed to be 10 minutes long. And some of us can tell time and some of us cannot.
People were just enthusiastic, right? People really love talking about themselves.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I thought they were. I should be honest.
You can be honest.
I go to so many meetings and I don't read all of those reports. But this was a different opportunity to get to engage with the conference leaders and hear their stories. So I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated that. And it gave you a real sense of both the diversity of Mennonite Church USA and at the same time, the way that God is showing up in our churches, just in a variety of ways. And so for me, that was really exciting.
Yeah.
That in our different contexts, people are being faithful, that we are following Jesus. So
Right.
Yeah.
And by diversity, it's just diversity of how we live out that Anabaptist witness. I
Right.
think that's the thing that I get to see
Yeah.
as executive director of
Yeah.
Mennonite Church USA.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't always get that sense of that here in Ohio because we're largely a rural conference. And so it's really neat to hear how other people are living out that. I think one of the other highlights for me at CLC is that we had 2 women come in and give a workshop on digital discipleship.
Yeah.
And so basically just talking about how to manage your online presence well. And they gave some really good feedback and advice, and I thought they were really fantastic. So that was another highlight for me. I'm trying to think what else happened at CLC.
I think
Glenn.
those were the main things. We did talk a little bit about the ongoing process with the membership guidelines, and Linda Dibble, this was her first meeting as the moderator elect. So it was kind of the kickoff of the new biennium. We did a little recap of some of the things that happened at the convention. Mm-hmm. And so I think we are starting off pretty good. I thought the convention this year was good, and I think it's setting us on a good trajectory for Mennonite Church USA.
And I would affirm that. I mean, I was at Kansas City, and I heard a lot of positive, about the conference and affirmations for how it went. So it was, thank you for doing whatever you did, and others. It was a good week.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you gave the kind of closing sermon, and you sort of introduced the hashtag Bring the Peace, right? And so you want to say a little bit more about that, or how people might connect with that? Bring the Peace?
I think that we worked a lot bit on the journey forward, and one of the things that we said is that we want to be witnesses to God's peace. People say that we are a historic peace church, but I say, hey, we need to be a peace church of today. We want to be relevant. And of course, bring the peace, I think, is one of the ways that we can do that. The hashtag is just catchy. Everybody does hashtags. So we want something catchy, something people could remember, but also for people to think about, what does that mean in their context? How do we bring the peace? And it's not like we own the peace. Some people are a little worried about my aggressiveness in bringing the peace. As Mennonites, we can't be too aggressive in serving God. But the bring the peace is, so what do we do in our communities, in our context, to create that peace or to be a part of that peace? It could be the prayers that we send forward. It could be how we interact based on the communities that we are a part of. And because, like you said, we have a very diverse church. And so sometimes people think, oh, we don't care anything about the rural congregations. No, that's not true. People in rural communities have different needs. They have different things that are going on. I know some rural communities are plagued by drugs and abuse, just like any big city is. And so those things aren't, the need for peace isn't isolated to a certain context, but we have to figure out how we live that out. And I think that's what I want to encourage each of us to do as congregational leaders, as pastors, as members. How are we participating and being witnesses to God's peace? How are we spreading the love of Christ in whatever setting that we are a part of?
Mm-hmm. So if people wanted to access that, I've been noticing online that people have been writing stories, and that hashtag is attached to that. So you would be encouraging our congregations, if there's great things happening, to send those in?
Yeah, because a lot of times the news that you hear about in some of our, I guess, Mennonite media is just the bureaucracy, right? You just hear some of the negative stories, the things that are, I don't know, maybe controversial, but there's a lot of good work going on in the churches that we don't hear about. So we want to hear those stories, because not just to say, hey, look at us, but it may spark good ideas in other communities. Again, I get to see the denomination at its best a lot of times when I go to places and they may have a food bank set up that they're doing something special, or they may be building shelters for the homeless, or a thrift store that's really benefiting the community. And we need to tell more of those stories to inspire people. But going back to the digital discipleship, how do people find out about our church or what's going on? Well, they find out about those things online. So part of the Bring the Peace initiative is also to help us with our digital presence, so people understand what Mennonite Church USA stands for and what our affiliated congregations and conferences are doing.
Okay, great.
So if someone has a story they think would be good for the Bring the Peace campaign or hashtag, what?
Yes, send it to. You can send it to Will Leviste, or I think Caleb Berkey. They are doing that blogging for us. So someone on our communication staff can pick that up and say, hey, we have a story idea, or this is something great that's going on in our conference. We want to hear those stories.
We'll have to get some Ohio Conference stories on there.
Yeah. Get them on out there.
I don't know that we've had one specifically on there yet, but I know the good things are happening. So send them in, people.
That's right. Send them in.
Yeah. One of the other things you just sort of mentioned that we talked about at CLC is you gave an update on the process that's going to be happening related to the membership guidelines.
Yeah.
And I know that people are interested in that. It also makes them a little bit anxious.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit sort of what the thinking is behind why we want to poke that, sleeping
Why do we want to?
Sleeping bear?
I don't know if we want to. I don't want to, but I feel like that there's been a push from the delegates to do something with the membership guidelines. I think people were expecting something in 2019 based on the 2015 resolutions. And so I didn't feel like with the change in leadership, me coming on as executive director, that we were ready to dive into the membership guidelines. I felt like we needed to focus on the journey forward. So following Jesus, witnessing to God's peace, helping people experience transformation. Those are the things that I think are important that will help us to move forward as a church. And so we still have these documents that may or may not say what people think they say. And so what do we deal? How do we deal with those things in our system? There is some symbolism surrounding these documents that we have to consider. They have a history in the denomination, the formation of the denomination, but these documents were even changed. And so the document that we have now is not even the document that we had in 2001. It was substantially changed, and without delegate approval, I should say. It was substantially changed in 2012 and presented to the delegates in 2013 as an administrative update. And so, we're wrestling with this document that was really brought together for the formation of Mennonite Church USA. And so it's kind of one of those things where some people in the system want it addressed. I'm on record saying that I don't think our documents will save us, and I am, I don't know how to feel about us having to maybe process this in 2021. I think that the delegates will probably be able to speak to whatever comes out of this process, but I hope that we can keep our focus on those important issues, the journey forward, following Jesus, witnessing the God's peace, and helping people experience transformation. I think that's what's important for our denomination.
And really, the controversies around the part 3 of this document that would prohibit people from doing same-sex marriages, or what's the other piece of it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Ordaining or licensing clergy that are in same-sex relationships.
It's primarily performing same-sex wedding ceremonies and what happens if you do. And then it also refers to Purdue and Saskatoon's statements on how we look at same-sex relationships or sexual orientation. And so the rest of the document, the membership guidelines, is actually addressed in our bylaws as far as membership. People are under the misconception that the membership guidelines has to do with the membership of people, but it doesn't. It's actually the membership of conferences joining Mennonite Church USA. So that was back in 2001. We don't have conferences joining Mennonite Church USA. It was kind of an agreement to bring together the former GCs and MCs. That was kind of, that Section 3 was actually added to facilitate that merger. And so now it just has some things hanging out there that's actually addressed in other parts of our documents.
With Ohio Conference, I don't know how much you've followed us. I don't expect you to know much of our history, but I do know one of the things that ratchets up the pressure in our conference, at least I see it in our area, is that I can't remember the date, but one of our ACAs, when our conference was at a pretty tenuous spot, a lot of tension, we did pass a resolution that said, like, we are going to stay with Mennonite Church USA as a conference, because there were churches pushing for us to leave as a conference. So we're going to stay, but we kind of said these are things that we will. I should have the document in front of me, but it basically said if there is a change to the confession of faith,
significant change.
Significant or substantive. I think that was the word.
Right.
Or substantive change to the membership guidelines. Then Ohio Conference would evaluate their relationship to MC USA. The wording may not be right, so that kind of
but I'm familiar with that.
You're familiar with it. Okay, so that's when Ohio Conference, from our chair looking at, I can't speak for Ohio Conference, but that's kind of like, this is being looked at. Now what? So that's kind of like some of the questions swirling around our conference, at least, is, we're going to have to dive into this now because we've
You drew this line in the sand, right?
Yeah.
Did you read my article?
I did read your article. So when you read your article, I'm like, man, is that written to Ohio Conference?
No, it's not. It wasn't. But I think that's part of the problem when we lay out some of these edicts. And conferences. The funny thing is that conferences and congregations have a lot of autonomy in Mennonite Church USA. We are not and we talked a little bit about this at CLC. We are not a total kind of like Episcopal or top-down hierarchical type of church, and we're not totally congregational polity. We're actually a more collaborative model of partnership, kind of like a network of organizations. We've agreed to be together. These are our common values, and we're supposed to work in collaboration. And so conferences and congregations really have a lot of autonomy. It's not a lot that the denomination can really do to say, hey, you have to do this or you can't do this. You can be as restrictive or as open as you pretty much want to be in a lot of cases. Again, the membership guidelines were for the formation of the denomination. And so in some sense, I would say that, well, I know they were supposed to be reviewed back in 2007. That never really happened. And so as you look at these documents now, is everyone really adhering to them? You know, we have different practices in different conferences. So now we kind of have this document that's hanging out there that's not really working effectively. The executive board doesn't really have this type of punitive power to go change individual pastors' behaviors and things like that. So how helpful is the document to us moving forward? And so, and the other thing about the Confession of Faith, as Mennonites, we don't revise Confession of Faith. Yeah. We just write new ones. And so any of these things, churches can actually say, hey, well, we're going to still follow the membership guidelines. You pretty much could say that, churches or conferences, these are our restrictions that we're placing on ourselves. That would be pretty much acceptable in our system.
Okay. And then as far as describe for people what the process is now laid out to sort of go ahead and move towards 2021 with the membership guidelines.
Yeah, well, so we just had a meeting in Chicago with it was about 25 people that were participating. I participated. So we had 3 staff members and also 3 executive board members. And then we had tried to have a pretty diverse group of people that participated. So men and women, we had different pastoral roles, some conference leaders, pastors, people from the more progressive side and people from the more conservative side, some racial ethnic diversity. So we tried to have a pretty balanced group of people to talk about the membership guidelines, its impact on the church, and what's the best way to move forward. And so that group is met and came up with some recommendations, some thoughts, reviewed the history of the membership guidelines, how they came to be, the ongoing impact of the membership guidelines on members of Mennonite Church USA. So that group laid out some recommendations. They're still working on some of those things, and they'll present that to the executive board, and the executive board will meet in January to review those and see if it agrees with the recommendations or if it wants to modify those things. And then we'll go about setting out a process of informing conferences and congregations. I'm hoping that we'll have all that done by May so that conferences can talk about this at their summer assemblies, their summer gatherings, and so give you a year to work on those things. I can't promise that because it's not totally in my hand. It's actually the executive board's decision. So, I have my preference, but the executive board has not even seen these recommendations yet. And they're not even finished yet. And so we'll be sending that to the board as soon as we can. And then in January, they'll meet to talk about it. And then, of course, after that, CLC gets to see it, and we'll get conference leadership feedback on this process.
Okay. So that's the process moving forward. And so it's kind of going to be a step-by-step thing. And so people shouldn't get overly anxious about it because we're still in process. And so whatever you hear in the grocery store from your neighbor may not be right. But we're...
I think you should just ask yourself, how is this preventing me from sharing the gospel? Is any of this going to prevent you from living into those 3 commitments those renewed commitments that we have as a church, or to providing healing and hope in your community? Those are the things I think you really should focus on. Nobody's coming to your conference to try to, I'm saying this, I don't think no one's coming to your conference to try to change how you do ministry or change who pastors your churches. Those things are still local decisions. The denomination has a certain role in the life of the church, and people need to understand that role is significantly different from the role of congregations and conferences. And so we do have some unifying values that we bring as a church. We have consolidation of services that we bring, but we don't pastor congregations. We aren't the local credentialing authority. That's at the conference level. And so, take these documents and what they mean. Just hold them lightly, and let's focus on the things that we can do together, the values that we hold as Anabaptist Christians.
This is a question that I remember we had someone from Mennonite World Conference on our podcast.
Yeah.
And we asked them this question. So I'll ask you.
Okay.
So when you look at what Mennonite World Conference, everyone just seems really excited about it.
Yeah.
It's great. Diversity is awesome. And then when you look at MCUSA, it seems like diversity is kind of raises anxiety.
Right.
And it's like, no, this is not so awesome. So, you know, what, I can't remember his answer. I have to go look at our archives.
Okay.
What would be your response to that? Why do you think that there's anxiety about our relationships in MCUSA, but in Mennonite World Conference, this kind of diversity is celebrated?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting because I go to Mennonite World Conference and sit on the general council because of my role. And so we have the same polarities at Mennonite World Conference that we have here in Mennonite Church USA, some of the same polarizations when it comes to our understanding of human sexuality and LGBT people. But Mennonite World Conference doesn't make any decisions. People just go to the assembly. They go and have fun, and they sing and celebrate, and then they come back to their own context. But if you think those same discussions aren't going on in the leadership of Mennonite World Conference, you're just naive. They are, but Mennonite World Conference really doesn't have any decision making power or authority, I guess, on our denomination. It actually, people just want to go and worship and have fun when they go to the assembly. And why was our convention so successful this year? Well, we just came and had fun. We did worship. We did some study, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time voting and debating. I think that's probably where some of the contention comes. And I think people hold that the bureaucracy of the church, they hold it a little bit too tightly. Again, we have to understand the role of each level of the church and appreciate it for what it is. And so I don't really understand rationally why people get so upset about certain things that the denomination does when we don't have this type of papal authority in Mennonite Church USA. The church can't come in, and the denomination can't come in and command or demand that you do this or that you do that. We really have a collaborative model of leadership, and we should really be able to coexist and come together to worship. And I said the denomination is there to create the capacity to do more good. We enhance the reach and give members the ability to go to places like Mennonite World Conference, to speak to national issues, to do international missions, and have a relationship between national bodies or international bodies. That's the role of the national church.
Well, Glenn, while we have you, what's something? So we've asked you a lot of these questions that are kind of bureaucratic in nature, but as you look at your job, you know, what is it that's most exciting that you're working on? What do you most enjoy in the denomination right now?
Well, I'm excited about this Bring the Peace campaign. I actually am excited about that. What can we do as a peace church? I mean, I think there are so many needs in our country right now. The church can make a difference. I think we have to start focusing a little bit more outwardly as we think about the role and the mission of the church. You see so much with the gun violence and these local school shootings. What can we do as Mennonites to help that, help alleviate that, or when people are in need or hurting or have trauma? How can we go to those areas of need? I think that's what we need to start thinking about in our local congregations. How can we really be witnesses to God's peace? That's the important thing. Also, what will our children, what kind of church do we want for them 10, 15 years from now? I think that's the mindset that all of us leaders now need to be thinking about. Are we mentoring the next generation of leaders? How are we preparing them for leadership? Are the decisions we're making today going to be helpful for them 20 years from now? Is our church going to still be relevant? Those are the things I think that we need to be wrestling with and spending time with.
I think one other thing that probably people in Ohio Conference are excited is a new church planting initiative. We have several pastors who are participating with the Sent group right now. And I think as you talk about the vision of who we're going to be in the future, we need churches if we're going to be a denomination in the future. I just was reading something this week that the Anglican Church in Canada, they're looking at their demographics and saying there won't be a church by 2040 unless something changes. Right. Their bishop is saying that. So for, I think, as we look towards the future too, that church planting is critical.
Yeah, and more so than church planting, we need to develop leaders. I mean, that's the key thing. If we have people with vision, the church planting will be a natural consequence.
Sure.
So we want to have good leaders for the future. Leaders are the ones that decide to stay in Mennonite Church USA or leave Mennonite Church USA. Leaders help set the vision and tone for our congregations and conferences. We can't overlook leadership. I think that, one of the things that we're working on is leadership development. Michael Danner and I are looking at ways in which we can develop culturally competent leaders who can lead the church, who have a broad perspective and also a vision for leadership.
And didn't MDT just seed a group for leadership development with the Ohio Conference?
So our ministry development team of Ohio Conference is going to be putting together a group to specifically working on development of leaders, because when we look at the the number of MLIs that are available and people wanting to come to our beautiful part of the country, there are not many people who want to do that. And so we're thinking we need to be looking and developing people who understand our cultural context. So, yeah.
And I think people want to join and be a part of institutions that do have an appreciation, for one thing, of leadership, that they understand their mission and their context. You know, we throw this word missional out there a lot, but I do think missional, if I had to define it, would be something more like the Nehemiah 4:6, where it says the people had a mind to work. And if you think about that story, people understood their role in the community. They were all willing to chip in, and it was all centered around, that central sanctuary type of model that you look at in the Old Testament. But, focusing on the Word of God, bringing God's people back, and then everyone understanding their role and how they fit into rebuilding their community. Those are the things I think that are going to help grow the church. It's not going to be a fight over the membership guidelines. I'm just being honest. I mean, some people are going to want to fight over the membership guidelines. I think it's going to be a challenge for the church. But what type of organizations do people want to lead? They want to lead organizations that are making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And we hear the same thing from Ohio Conference pastors. The last time we were all together, people want to focus on mission. They don't want to be fighting over documents.
All right.
I think largely what we heard from our pastor
good,
groups.
Good.
So,
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
And so you just draw up a resolution and say, hey, we don't want to talk about the membership guidelines. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but hey, yeah. But the church, the delegates will get to talk about that, or whatever process we come up with. The CLC will get to give some feedback. So I'm hoping that people want to focus on things that will help move this church forward.
Right.
Well, Glenn, thank you for all your leadership you've been providing. We're looking forward to hearing more from you, and thank you for taking the time to sit down again with Ohio Conference Cast.
All right.
Thank you.
Good to be back. All right. Thank you all.
Ohio people with Mennonite views, and they're gonna give us some missional news. Ohio Conference Cast.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Ohio Conference Cast. We would love to hear from you. Our email is ohioconferencecast@gmail.com. Ohio Conference Cast is brought to you by the Ohio Conference Leadership Team, along with Norm Sohar, sound engineer, Megan Sohar, voiceover, Ann Lehman, publisher, and our many guests and listeners.